We're going to kick off again with our discussions on infrastructure here at the National Construction Summit. And I'm delighted to welcome Simone Mendoza, from Bechtel, who's going to moderate this panel.
Thank you, David, and I'm happy to invite Beatrice Gilly, Maeve Jennings, and Gillian Bolton. Please take your seats. It seems women are taking over infrastructure because two panels just before it was all full women panel again, so we just have to keep up with us. Be careful. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And I'm Simone Mendoza. I'm an architect and town planner specialized in aviation infrastructure. And currently I'm working as business development manager for Bechtel in the UK and Ireland market. Bechtel is an engineering and construction company with its headquarters for infrastructure based in London. And before we begin, I would like to invite you all to imagine Dublin 10 years from now. Not the Dublin we wish, but the Dublin that could be if we don't deliver the infrastructure that the city needs. A city where population has continued to grow, but the infrastructure hasn't kept the pace. Where housing exists, but connectivity doesn't. Where people are living further from where they work, but transport systems remain under strain, overcrowded, and unreliable. A city where critical water and energy infrastructure is operating at or beyond capacity, limiting new developments and new investments. And perhaps, and most importantly, a city where confidence, public and private, has begun to erode, where delivering major projects is seen as too slow, too complex, and too uncertain. For sure, this is a black future for Dublin. But there is another one, a brighter one. One where the city has embraced smarter delivery, where public and private sectors are working in partnership, where innovation is something we talk about. It's not something we only talk about, but something we contract for, we plan for, and we deliver. The difference between these two futures is not the vision, because we have the plans and we know what's needed. The difference is the delivery. How are we going to achieve that? And to speak a little bit about this, I have these three fantastic ladies who I will ask to introduce themselves and answer one question for me. Where do you think is the real bottleneck for delivering the infrastructure? Planning, procurement, skills, or coordination? Beatrice, if you want to go.
Thank you, Simone. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. So I'm Beatrice Gilly. I work for the National Building Control and Market Surveillance Office. But I just joined in, and on the past 8 years, I've been working on the industry here as a civil engineer. I'm from Brazil, and I think one of the main things that I struggling when I start to understand opportunities to get here and start working was about the marketing. And not only that, was as well the difference from the industry here in Ireland and from where I came from. And for me, on my perspective, I think the bottleneck will be in relation to skills. But I will let the girls introduce themselves first, and then we can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Beatrice, and thanks very much, Simone. My name is Gillian Bolton. I have worked with Jacobs for quite a long time now in the major infrastructure delivery, so in transportation, energy, and water sectors.
My name is Maeve Jennings. I'm the Managing Director of Harcourt Investments. I more recently have been working again at the interface between infrastructure delivery and policy and trying to bridge that, mostly in France and a little bit in Ireland now of late.
Yeah. And what do you think is the bottleneck, Maeve?
For me, I'm not sure where the bottleneck lies, but if it lies either in policy or in procurement, I think it's a bridge between the two, which we are in the process of constructing. I think policy-wise, the Irish government has started to deliver big time from the Accelerated Infrastructure Task Force report, and now more recently the Critical Infrastructure Bill, which has moved very quickly and with great alacrity on behalf of the government. I think that the procurement side is ready, willing, and able, and you can see that by the enthusiasm here in this building. But I think there might be a small gap in that the process of transferring that policy into actionable procurement, it goes into kind of multi-agency bodies which have already perhaps an overloaded agenda and not necessarily the historical skill set of pushing the infrastructure delivery program out into the private sector world. And I think that that gap is probably an area that merits some focus. In other countries, in other European countries, possibly most notably in France, where I work, they have delivery structures that ensure a kind of a coordinated interpretation of the policy, where they have in non-sequential delivery ready to go. So when they are ready to go from the policy to the procurement point, there isn't the same gap seeking water connections, seeking electricity connections, planning going back in and being reviewed and reformed and reseen and repriced. I think that perhaps that bridge de-risks the procurement process such that by the time you're going to procurement, a great deal more certainty is built into the project.
Yeah.
I think that's so not quite policy, not quite procurement, but perhaps
But
just
no.
the piece in between,
Yeah.
I think might need some focus.
Gillian.
I'm trying to think now on the hop, because I agree with you that it's not one particular area. It's all of the things that you mentioned there, Simone, and how they all interact with each other. But specifically, definitely the in and around planning and all of the sequential piece. That's definitely been looked at. But as you said, I think both the agencies, the utility agencies, and the government themselves are looking at that through the work they've done with accelerating infrastructure. And it has, I think, they are doing that really quickly, which is really impressive. I think whether it's I would challenge the level of needing to have so much certainty before we go into procurement. I think our procurement approaches need to be flexible to allow us to move forward relatively quickly, and to accept that, you know, projects, particularly the larger scale infrastructure projects, that they need to be able to adapt and they need to be able to change as we move through them. And one of the things I was going to talk about is that risk aversion piece, which Maria and Mary from the NTA as utilities picked up on earlier this morning, and that we all need to be, as a sector, much more open to that and much more open to the fact that projects develop and change as they move along. That is natural and normal, and it's something we should all be able to deal with, and making sure that, to maybe that your point, Maeve, that how we procure these projects has that level of uncertainty and change management built into it, because it's acceptable. Yeah.
I think on the panel previously this morning, the girls, they were mentioned that they are trying to start a better communication between all them. And I believe it is a combination of all those skills that we are mentioned here, all these items that we are mentioned here. So when I raise skills, it's because I believe like the reflection that we are having on the system nowadays is in relation to the coordination of the projects that we have since the planning, since the beginning. And I think if we get people better trained, and not in a perspective only of education, but just to understand everything, all the stages of the process, all the steps, that will help improve the process, and probably we're gonna have better results at the end, because everything will be followed step by step with a better attention, let's say.
Yeah.
So I think training, as I mentioned, is one of the things. And one of the other things that I think is more qualified professionals from the ground level until the high level. I think that will be important for our process as well and for the results. So I believe the bottleneck, on my perspective, is a combination of everything that we are talking here.
Yeah, I agree, and especially if you're talking on new ways of procuring, you need people to understand and how it changes and to be more flexible and be able to manage different types of contracts. Maeve, in your recent writing in the Business Post, you highlighted the pressures on island infrastructure, and you kind of mentioned examples of other countries and how they have solved the challenges. We have talked a lot on procurement and policy-driven, and what about what happens on the ground? Do you have any examples that you think Ireland could follow to support and to be more to help it to be more productive?
I do. I think that probably to the point of Beatrice's comment about the skills as well. I think Ireland has done it very well before. In fact, it has done in the past what other European countries do. Notably in Paris, the Société de Grand Paris is one of the exemplary companies for delivering massive infrastructure around Paris. I think at one point in its life cycle, it was the largest infrastructure project in Europe. But again, it's that bridge that I think is very important, and I'm a big fan of delivery companies. But again, it's something that Ireland has done in the past. When I was in child labour and working in Temple Bar Properties, we had a special purpose delivery company, Temple Bar Properties Limited, and its role was to be the client for all the procurement processes to ensure that the government's policy was being enacted by way of a dedicated delivery company. I think that advocacy for the project, that mindset that was trying to maximize the opportunity in Temple Bar and to deliver quickly what the government had asked us to deliver, needed a dedicated body to do it. Because of that, every opportunity, every creative impulse, to your point, Julia, every opportunity to create more and better and make a roof garden where the one wasn't planned before. We'd established relationships with the planners. We established relationships with the fire officers, with the water authorities, with the electrical authorities. It was a coordinated scheme that had tax incentives where we thought people would be less interested in investing, et cetera, in order to deliver this piece of the city. I think that dedicated agency, Lewis had it, we had it, the Docklands had it. I think that was key to the success of the project, a team that was living and breathing for that project's delivery. I think that might be
It is. The plan we have, are there too much complex projects to be delivered at the same time?
I don't think so. I think Ireland's well able to do that. It has the capacities, it has the competencies. We went from being a tiny, remote economy into being, one of Europe's, best admired economies. So, no, I think we can do it. I just think there's a framework problem between, as I say, the policy and the execution. And again, it is a skills issue that it's like the knowledge we had delivering in the past is now being reconstructed. It isn't in that big economies like France. They have universities for people to deliver infrastructure. Yeah. So they retain that knowledge base, how to get a big project up and running, how to put a team together, how to ensure it delivers, how to ensure it has the built-in flexibility to deal with the bumps in the road. And I think Ireland is for the first time in a long time, starting to put infrastructure back in place.
In the agenda.
And I think that this gap will be filled. The government's all over it. They've dedicated 250 billion to it. I have no doubt that the gap will be filled and in short order, I expect.
just on that, we do have an awful lot to do right now, and it is all coming at the same time. You know, there's a lot of different reasons for it: the growth in our population, the growth in our economy, the lack of infrastructure investment previously. And I absolutely agree, we can do it. We have done it before. We have a really highly skilled, highly professional workforce in Ireland. We have people that want to come here and work. But we all, and again, touching on the conversation earlier, we all have to be aware of that together, and all of the various different infrastructure utilities and organisations that need that workforce, that delivery, they all need to start, as they said they were already, we all need to work together, and needing to bring in the supply chain as well, so that we are all collectively coming up with the solutions as to how we can get the most out of the people that we have, and to deliver, because they're also really fascinating and interesting and exciting projects to deliver going forward, so people want to be involved in them.
So I wanted exactly to ask you that. You've been involved in several water infrastructure projects here in Ireland and in Scotland. What it is that we are doing well, and what it is that we can improve?
So that is, what we're doing well is we can deliver these projects. Both Maria and Mary spoke earlier on about how well we can do these projects, how we have done these projects. Yes, there's a few that get a lot of media attention, and they sort of distract from all of the good work that's happening all the time, on the day-to-day, because there's a huge budget being delivered across those utility infrastructure constantly. So that's all exceptional in terms of and having that workforce, and having those people also that are passionate about delivering infrastructure, because I do think people that get involved in that national infrastructure are there because they want to, because they have a passion and a feel and a desire to improve our society, essentially. So that's a really good thing. We just need to get the right approaches and to harness it. The other thing, and we talk about it a lot, you touched on it as well, Maeve, is the regulatory and the planning and the legal systems that we have. And yes, that's to your piece about what's limiting it, they are limiting it. But we can't lose sight of the fact that there is really strong processes there in place, and that they are there for a reason, and that they are very transparent, and that they allow us to, as the public, understand what's happening in these projects and why, and the need for them. So while it's the two sides of the same coin, it's not something we need to throw away. We need to try to enhance and improve on that. And environment, that was the only other thing. Like we do that well as well. You know, we really make sure that we are considering how our projects and how our infrastructure impacts on society and the environment. To the limiting it, then it's when we allow that to become the rule, you know, and that's what's controlling our delivery, as opposed to supporting it and helping it to progress. Within that framework, you know, around, you talked about sequential processes. That's a big, you know, we really need to look at. And again, that Accelerating Infrastructure Task Force have looked at, have identified some of the challenges and what can be done to try and improve those. And I think we need, as a sector, to build on what they've done, to take that and to provide that same commitment, and to try to move forward with all of those actions, because they will help us to make that change.
Yeah, and Beatrice, you touched on the skills and the people's shortage and how you need to prepare them, and together, and Gilly touched on planning and other stuff. So commonly, regulations are blamed for delays. In such a pressure environment where the government is being challenged to deliver more and more infrastructure, how do we balance safety, compliance, and the speed where those projects need to be delivered? How can we, as Gillian said, I mean, everybody complains about the planning application process, but at the same time, it does protect from a wrong decision. Again, how can we keep being compliant being safe, but at the same time responding to the need that the Ireland has?
I think the first thing is we need to understand that all those stages, they are part of the safety and the better quality results that we are looking for at the end of the project. So the main thing for me is we need to work off those points. So safety, compliance, and speed of the results of the project and the delivery of the project, they need to work together. And then I go back for the planning stage and skills. Because once we have that prepared and followed properly with people trained and with the right skills and correct skills to make sure all the steps of this process will be followed, and we use those three things together, safety, compliance, and speed delivery, I think the results can only be one, can only be a positive one. Because once you work in a different perspective and you want to have everything done as soon as possible, but you are not paying attention on the compliance, then you're going to need to redo something. You're going to have rework, and then you're losing time, and you probably are spending more money on the project, and that will bring an issue on safety some moment. So in my perspective, I believe the three of them, they need to be planned, organized, and communication will be a skill, especially on the planning stage. So if we have all the industries talking each other and trying to bring a better communication with the community and with the results that we are looking for with that project, I think the planning stage will be more acceptable with the community around and will be easier for us to deliver that in a way that people know what they are getting at the end, and they will respect that, and they will help that process to happen.
And in the building control process, is it possible to streamline some of those processes that can help contractors have a standard and gain time on their delivery?
I think most of the building control departments, they are open to help and to respond any issues that you have during the process. And we, as the National Building Control, we are always developing CPDs and trainings to help people to understand. We have as well a training course on the South Institute Technology University. Am I right? Yeah? That you can do this course is a one-year certificate. You can learn how all the stages works. And with the knowledge, that one of the things that I'm bringing since the beginning, I think will be easier to understand all the process, and then you can get those stages of the building control request done properly. So it's not a way that you can avoid one of the steps, because all of them, they are part of the compliance and the safety. But there is tools that you can get from the building control department or for the National Building Control to help you to go through all the process.
That's great. And we're coming now to the end of our session, and I would like you to ask one question for all of you, and that is, if you're giving full control of 1 year, what would you change first to accelerate infrastructure delivery in Ireland? Who wants to go first?
I think, well, 1 year I'm not going to build a metro, I don't think. There's one area of Irish legislative change that I think would be good to look at. Well, two. I'm going to use two, if I may, play two cards. One is the control of the land is a massive advantage when it comes to delivery of infrastructure. One of the key issues for the Temple Bar project, for the Dublin Docklands project, was the state owned the land, or most of it. In the context of European projects, the state's ability to acquire the land is significantly enhanced vis-a-vis the Irish legislative regime.
Yeah.
So if we want land in Ireland and we have reluctant sellers, The only option available is the rather draconian CPO, compulsory purchase orders, and they're very heavy-handed. Most of Europe has an alternative system which is called preemption, where if a property comes up for sale, the state can intervene and acquire it at market value. So it's less aggressive than a compulsory purchase order and allows the state to accumulate a foothold in terms of land ownership where they foresee an infrastructure project. Now that obviously implies a good deal of clairvoyance, a significant commitment to what they're going to do over the following 20, 30, 50 years. But I wouldn't regret that discipline in terms of and we have it in the National Development Plan. We do have it. It's a question of putting behind it the investment in the ownership or the control or the options on the land required to execute. So I would do that. The other thing I would do is what we do in France, which is our projects of national importance. So there's a separate planning stream for projects of national importance that create the kind of Ireland we all want for the future, for our children, for our children's children. And those projects are considered to have de facto the right to be built. They must conform with all the standards that Beatrice is talking about. They must be of a high quality, but they will be built. That is a decision by the Irish government and the representatives of, in a democratic state of the people thus elected, and those projects will be built. That process, that piece of legislation, I would think would help when it comes to the massive projects like Metrolink. They're my two Queen for a year.
I totally agree. You need to have a workforce, a streamline of processes that are dedicated to those critical infrastructure, national infrastructure projects for sure. We have the plan, but it's still not in place yet. And I think that's totally necessary. Gillian?
Yeah, same, Maeve. I'm not sure any of this is achievable in a year, but I think one of the big things, and again, it comes to some of what you're talking about, Simone. There is a shift, I think, in perception, both from the public and from our different organisations. But continuing that, where when we are moving through the steps of a project, or when we are delivering different aspects, that instead of being focused on the phase or the task or the piece that we're doing, that we are focused on the outcome, focused on achieving the delivery of that particular critical piece of infrastructure. And that needs to come from the very beginning. Now, I don't think we can ever change it, but you know, that mindset, and it comes back to the legal reform and the planning reform, that we are not so focused on a process and not focused downwards on a particular element. The other piece that also is touched on, or as part of the Infrastructure Action Plan, is around public reform. And again, in a year, but how you get really to get the public with us in terms of the need for some of this critical infrastructure. That we're not doing this because, you know, it's
somebody
what
wants
we do
to.
today.
It's
yeah,
necessary.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's so critical. And again, somebody else mentioned it earlier, so I'm hijacking everything, but we are at a critical point now in terms of housing. It's not just the inability to build our homes, it's the fact that even if they're built, they won't have power supply, they won't have water supply, they won't have wastewater capacity. So that's why it's become such a big discussion topic now, but we shouldn't have to wait till we're at a crisis, a double crisis point really.
Yeah.
And how do we shift that perception of what we're doing to the public, so that to all of the things you said, that special purpose vehicle, that these are needed, they're governed, they will be done properly and correctly, but they have to happen.
Yeah. Beatrice?
As both of them said, 1 year is not time
It's
enough.
not enough.
But I'll keep my, because I agree with both of you, and I think that will be needed. And following my perspective on the skills process, and I agree with you about the mindset, I think, if we can get a time to focus on our lessons learned from the past, from the projects that we delivered already and all the mistakes was done on the process, and try to use that to improve our perspective for the next projects. I think that will be a big change. And one of the things that I'm going to bring to the attention as well is be more open for foreigners. Like now I'm talking about myself as well, because I think when we have people from abroad and they have different perspectives from their country, how the construction was there and the infrastructure they have there, that help us to build something stronger and help us to improve the process here. So I believe the industry is already open to foreigners, and I think we can keep doing that. But then we need the apprentices or some training for those ones because they are used to one type of...
Adapting to the market.
Exactly. So I think in 1 year, that will be my perspective and my point.
Yeah, thank you all. Well, can I say that? Okay, I would encourage disruption. If you go to wars, pandemics, and other big disruptive events, we know that technology evolves in a pace that's much faster than normally. And coming from abroad and working internationally, Ireland is a fantastic place today. It brings lots of opportunity, not only for the internal market, for the outside market as well. And I think lots of people are looking to come here. They do fear some kind of instability on contracts and so, but they want to be here. And I think we need to embrace new technologies. We need to embrace new ways of constructing and delivering. We need to change different. We need to shift our minds. There are faster ways. And in mega projects, it's critical for you to cut up the time, because time is your worst enemy. It will bring crises, wars, economic, whatever, name it, time will bring it to you. So the shorter you can deliver a project, the better. So we need to look how can we expedite that. So thank you very much. And we are open for questions if anybody would like to ask any question to one of our panelists.